outside source. All right. Here, there's some prompts. They're there as well. So multiple places for you. But let's take a look at final paper. All right. So couple things, right? This is worth 25 points. So big chunk of your final grade. The prompts are down here. There's some stuff to go over before that, though. Again, same length requirement, 1,200 words. Okay, so same as the first one, 12-point font, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so I'm just going to kind of read through this. You can read along with me. Feel free to stop me if you have questions along the way. Otherwise, we can talk about questions at the end. So essay number 2, final essay, will focus on developing a clear thesis statement, engaging with an outside source, and close reading and analysis of a literary or filmic text. Okay, so for this one, you will need to consult at least one outside source. All right. Don't just quote the source and leave it alone. All right. The idea is you are going to engage with an outside source, build off of its ideas. Right. So you're going to use this essay, this book chapter, right, this text to support your thesis, the thesis you develop, right, your thesis argument, and or to contextualize the literary text or the film within a wider cultural moment, right? So don't let your outside text do the talking for you, though, right? Be sure to enter into a conversation with its ideas, right? The idea being, don't just take quotes, put them in your paper, leave them alone, right? You have to explain how this outside source works for your argument, right? You're always explaining, make those connections. It might seem obvious to you, doesn't necessarily seem obvious to your reader. Okay, so again, it's really important that you have a clearly identifiable thesis statement, right? An argument. This is vital for this paper. You know, there should be something within your introductory paragraph right from the beginning that as your reader, I can say, okay, they are arguing this, right? You can even write it that way. This essay argues X, right? So be sure to have a clear thesis statement. And you will be graded on the strength of your thesis and on how well your analysis provides evidence for your thesis. Now, close reading, which was the focus of the midterm paper, is essential for this, right? So again, be sure to refer directly to the literary or filmic text that you are discussing. Give us examples, quote from the literary film text, whatever, right? Be sure to explain both what the example means and how it means it. Right, all quarter I've been talking about content and form. This is the idea here. So in other words, don't just think about the plot, right? Think about the form. All right, and how the text is doing what it's doing. And so if you guys remember the method that we did weeks ago, right, where we found, we took a chunk of text and we looked for when the same word was used twice, when opposite words were used, when similar words were used, right? This is a method, it's called the method, right, that you can use to help you think about the use of language, right? So not just the plot, but how the work itself is using form, language, etc. Okay, so some things to avoid, right? These are in general, but especially for this paper, try to avoid using the phrase, this symbolizes this, right? This type of language is both too vague, it's also too limiting, right? If you want to argue for some sort of metaphor, something that's happening metaphorically in a text, be very clear about it, right? Don't just say, you know, the bread symbolizes sadness, right? Well, how? What do you mean, right? Really give us examples, explain the metaphor. Just saying something symbolizes something is never enough. Okay. So, in other words, how does the text suggest a metaphorical relationship? Okay, the next thing to avoid is try to avoid basing your argument on the author's life history, their life story, their biography, right? Now, to be sure, right, we've read texts, especially Abe Kobo's Beast Head for Home, right, where we know the author's life kind of influences what they've written about, okay? But you have to be very, very careful, okay, by saying, Abe wrote this because he was born in Manchuria, right? Um, Anytime we want to say the author is doing something, right, we get into a kind of dangerous territory because we don't know the author's intent. We don't know what they meant, why they do things, right? We can't ask them. Abe Kobo has died, right? We'll never know for sure why he did certain things. All we have is the text itself, right? Think about the text, not the author, right? So instead of saying Abe does this, right, think about Beast Head for Home does this, okay? So again, focus on the text, not so much the author and their life history. All right, next thing to avoid qualitative judgments. All right, so for the purpose of this essay, it really doesn't matter if you think the text is good or you think it's bad, right? You can write a very, very good academic critical essay on a book that you think is terrible, right? It's very badly written. That's fine, right? It really doesn't matter what your personal judgment of the text is, right? I think there's a tendency for students to want to say, oh, this work is a masterpiece, right? This is, and somehow that praising the work and arguing that it's such an amazing text is somehow going to help your paper, but it's not, right? It really doesn't matter. What matters is your argument, right? The argument you're making about what the text is saying or doing. Doesn't matter if it's a good book or a bad book. Okay, so kind of leave that behind. You're not writing a review. All right. Like I say, you're not writing an advertisement. Another thing, and you guys actually were really good about this for the most part during the midterm essay, but don't use those online generators for your works cited page. Often they screw up and then I have to take away points. There's a nice link here that should be able to help you write your own works cited bibliography page so that you can get easy points on your essay for that. Okay, let's get into the prompts. I'll do this as quick as possible. First prompt, right? First one is to develop a thesis or argument that answers the following question. What role does the concept of nationality play in Abe Kobo's Beast Head for Home? So you can see it's a very, very broad question, right? I'm asking you to think about nationality in that text and make some kind of argument, all right? Some kind of thesis about what nationality does in that text. So think both about what the text is saying about nationality and how it is saying it, all right? So both content, what, and form, how. Now, remember, you have to use an outside source. So I have given you some recommended topics that you can search for. You can explore looking for your outside source. You can look for texts about Japanese colonialism, including Manchuria, right? Critical texts on the work of Abe Kobo. There are many. Works about the repatriation of Japanese from colonial spaces after World War II, right? These are just a few things you could think about looking for as you search for outside sources. So that's the first prompt if you want to write about Beast Head for Home. Number 2 is to choose one text from either week 9 that we're in now or week 10 next week and develop a thesis or argument, right? An argument that answers the following question. What do you think the text you have chosen is saying about economic anxiety in Japan, either during or after the collapse of the bubble economy? Okay, so again, think about content and form, right? Make some kind of argument about one of these stories as a response to economic anxiety in Japan. So some things you can look at, texts on precarity. This is a term that's going to become important next week. Academic works on late stage capitalism. This was a topic that I introduced very, very briefly in the intro video for today. Or just academic works analyzing contemporary Japanese literature or film in general. So that's number 2. Number 3 is to choose one text from the readings for Monday, right? These are 3 readings that we're going to do for Monday that all talk about the events of March 11th, 3/11, right? The earthquake, Tohoku earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Okay, so you're going to pick one of those texts and you're going to develop a thesis or argument that answers this question. What does the text you have chosen say about the notion of hope? Again, think about content, what it's saying, and form, how it is saying it. So some things you can look at: academic texts about 3/11 literature. There's there are a lot of these out there. Critical texts about trauma theory, right? Or academic works concerning radiation after March 11th. And you'll see how that kind of makes sense after you do your reading for Monday. So those are the 3 prompts, okay? You might be thinking, I really wanted to write about Smile of a Mountain Witch, for example, right? And that doesn't really fit into any of these 3 prompts. That's okay. If you want to propose your own paper topic, all right? If you want to write about something here, something that's not covered here, right, you can do so, but you kind of have to come up with your own argument, and you can email me and we can talk about that, okay? So again, word requirement, 12-point font, etc. Again, please don't paraphrase, quote from, or borrow language from any other essays without giving proper citation. This does include works in other languages, right? So finding something online in a different language and then translating it into English. This is academic dishonesty, right? This counts as a kind of plagiarism. You might think it's easy to get away with that. It's not, okay? Canvas does have built-in software that searches for all of this, including languages that are not in English. So just don't do it. Don't do it. Write your own paper. It's okay to mention other people's ideas, but just give them credit, cite it, okay? If you have any questions about any of this, right, about plagiarism, academic dishonesty, please don't hesitate to talk to me. I'm happy to help you, okay? Okay, so this is the rubric. You can take a look at it on your own to get a kind of clear sense of what it's saying. But you can see what we're looking for here, right? Your thesis, your argument, that's 5 points. The analysis, the close reading, right? That's 5 points. Engagement with your outside source, that's 5 points. The structure, the flow, the organization of your essay, that's 5 points. Right? Interest, okay? Is it compelling to read? Is it interesting? Often, this is a question of, are you just sort of repeating things that I mentioned in class, or are you demonstrating your own ideas, your own engagement with the material, right? That's 3 points. Format, this is where citation, word count, all of that stuff comes in. That's 2 points. Really quickly, before I open the floor for questions, engagement with your outside source. One of the things that's really important about this is that you are choosing a credible academic source, okay? I can't stress that enough. This has to be academically credible source, right? Wikipedia doesn't count. Some blog post where some guy had an idea about Beasthead for Home, that doesn't count, right? So where can you go to find academically credible sources? There's a couple places. I've mentioned JSTOR before. JSTOR is a great site, okay? anything you find on JSTOR for the most part is going to be considered academically credible. Same thing with Project Muse, which, there we go, Project Muse, okay? Now you do have to be on a VPN in order to access this. I know some of you might have issues with that because of where you are living at the moment. If that's the case, please contact me, okay? Also, don't forget, we have a library here at UCI where you can search for all kinds of things. The great thing about our library search is that it will tell you if things are available online or not. If they are, you can follow the links and get them online. If you are living here in Irvine, you can also do curbside or pickup right outside the front door of the library. So I know it's a little harder with COVID, but there's still plenty of ways to get resources, academically credible resources. Yes, hopefully that helps. I'll say this too. If you find a source and you want to double check, you want to say, I want to make sure that this counts as academic, send me an email, say, I want to use this source. Is this okay? I will tell you, yeah, that's good, or nah, that doesn't count. Find something else. Okay. So you can ask me in advance whether it is academically credible or not. Okay. So I think that's enough for now on that. Let's take a few minutes. If anybody has any questions about your final paper, please ask now, either in the chat or